Today we're diving into Master Your Time by Thibaut Meus. Have you ever felt like the 24 hours in a day just aren't enough? Do you find yourself procrastinating on important tasks? This book offers practical strategies to take control of your time and focus on what truly matters. Stay with us till the end to discover how you can make every moment count and achieve your goals. Our time is limited, and sometimes even the 24 hours in a day feel insufficient. But how do you spend your time? Are you the kind of person who dedicates their Chapter 1. Stop explaining and start standing. Most people don't realize this, but the moment you start explaining yourself, you are no longer standing. You are bending. You are negotiating your position. And every explanation trains the world to question you. This is the truth you must accept early. Explaining yourself trains others to doubt you. Standing firm trains them to respect you. That's the difference. That's the key. You have a choice. You can spend your life justifying your decisions, or you can live as someone whose decisions stand on their own. Right now, think about how often you explain. Why you made that choice. Why you said no. Why you changed direction. Why you need space. Why you feel the way you feel. Each time you believe you're being polite. Each time you believe you're being clear. But underneath it, you're asking for permission. And you don't need their permission. You don't need permission to exist. You don't need permission to decide. You don't need permission to move forward. That's the core idea of this chapter. Read it again in your mind. Let it settle. Most people explain because they're afraid of tension. They're afraid of disappointing others. They're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being misunderstood. But here's the shift you must make. It's not about being understood. It's about being aligned. That's the discipline. When you over-explain, you signal uncertainty, even when you don't feel uncertain. You signal that your choice is flexible. You signal that your boundary is negotiable. You may not intend that message, but that's the message received. Look at real authority in the world. Strong leaders don't narrate every decision. They don't over-justify their direction. They state, they move, they hold. A CEO doesn't say, I hope this makes sense, but I decided this because. They say, this is the direction. We're moving forward. A parent with true authority doesn't argue endlessly with a child. They don't plead their case. They say, this is the boundary, and they stand. High performers don't send paragraphs explaining their absence, their focus, or their priorities. They act consistently, and consistency becomes explanation enough. That's the key. Action replaces explanation. You have a choice. You can explain your values, or you can live them so clearly that explanation becomes unnecessary. Most people talk too much because they don't trust themselves yet. So let's make this practical. From this moment forward, when you feel the urge to explain, pause. Ask yourself one question. Am I clarifying, or am I seeking approval? Be honest. That pause is where authority is built. Because clarity is short. Approval seeking is long. Clarity sounds like, this is my decision. This doesn't work for me. I won't be doing that. Approval seeking sounds like paragraphs, stories, emotional padding. And again, you have a choice. This is not about being rude. It's not about being cold. It's not about being dismissive. It's about discipline. It's not about ego. It's about self-trust. You don't need to convince emotionally healthy people. They respect clarity. They respect firmness. They respect consistency. The ones who push back hardest when you stop explaining, those are the ones who benefited from your insecurity. That's uncomfortable to accept, but it's freeing. Here's another truth. When you explain yourself, you give people a script to argue against. You give them openings. You give them leverage. You give them control. When you stand firm, there's nothing to grab onto. Silence closes doors. Certainty ends debates. That's the key. Let's talk behavior. Starting today, practice short statements. One sentence. No emotional cushioning. I've decided. I'm not available. This is what works for me. Then stop talking. Notice what happens inside you. Your heart rate will rise. Your mind will race. You'll want to fill the space. Don't. That discomfort is growth. That silence is authority forming. You have a choice. You can escape discomfort by explaining, or you can endure it and become stronger. Weak people escape. Strong people stand. And here's the paradox most people miss. The more you stand, the less resistance you face over time. Because people learn. They adapt. They stop questioning what no longer wavers. You don't need to announce that you've changed. You don't need to justify new boundaries. You enforce them by repetition. That's discipline. This chapter is not asking you to become loud. It's asking you to become solid. A solid person doesn't shake under questioning. They don't collapse into explanations. They don't chase understanding. They stand. And standing is a skill. It's trained. It's practiced. Each time you resist explaining, you strengthen that muscle. Each time you choose firmness, you reclaim authority. You don't need their permission. Say it again internally. You don't need their permission. By the end of this audiobook, you will understand this deeply. Authority is not demanded. It is demonstrated. And the first demonstration is this. Stop explaining. Start standing. You've taken the first step. You've recognized the habit. You've chosen discipline over comfort. Now you're ready for the next truth. Because once you stop explaining, you'll notice something else driving your behavior. The hunger for approval. The need to be validated. You mastered the decision to stand. Now let's expose the hidden cost of needing others to agree with you. Chapter 2: The Silent Cost of Seeking Validation. Every time you seek approval, you give something away. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. You hand your emotional state to someone else and wait to see what they do with it. That's the cost. And most people never calculate it. Here is the truth you need to hear clearly. Validation is rented power. Self-trust is owned power. That's the key. When you seek validation, you feel strong only when others agree. When you trust yourself, you remain steady whether they do or not. You have a choice. You can rent your confidence moment by moment, or you can own it permanently. Look at how this plays out in real life. In relationships, approval seeking sounds like this. Are you okay with this? Did I do something wrong? I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. What you're really saying is, please regulate my emotions for me. And the moment you do that, you lose leverage. Because now your peace depends on their reaction, their tone, their mood, their silence. That's exhausting. You weren't designed to live like that. No one was. In the workplace, it shows up differently but costs the same. Over-explaining emails. Asking for reassurance after every decision. Waiting for permission even when authority was already given. You believe you're being collaborative. But what you're actually doing is outsourcing confidence. And confidence outsourced never compounds. It drains. That's the silent cost. You go home tired, not from work, but from emotional negotiation. You replay conversations. You analyze reactions. You wonder if you said the right thing. You have a choice. You can continue paying that cost, or you can stop needing approval to breathe. Let's be precise here. This is not about becoming arrogant. It's not about ignoring feedback. It's not about becoming disconnected. It's about discipline. It's not about confidence. It's about self-trust. Confidence fluctuates. Self-trust holds. Approval seeking is rooted in fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of conflict. Fear of being disliked. But strong people understand something weak people don't. Being disliked is survivable. Being self-betraying is not. That's the shift. Every time you change yourself to earn approval, you lose a little internal respect. And internal respect is the foundation of authority. That's why approval seekers often feel invisible. They're present but not felt. Heard but not respected. Because people don't respect someone who doesn't trust themselves. Again, read that slowly. People don't respect someone who doesn't trust themselves. That's not cruelty. That's psychology. Here's another hard truth. The people who demand the most validation are usually the least satisfied by it. Why? Because rented power expires quickly. You get approval. You feel relief. Then anxiety returns. So you seek more. Explain more. Adjust more. That cycle never ends. Self-trust ends it. So what does self-trust look like in behavior? It looks like making a decision and not scanning faces for reactions. It looks like expressing a boundary and not softening it to be liked. It looks like allowing discomfort without trying to fix it with words. You have a choice. You can soothe others, or you can stabilize yourself. That's the key. Let's talk social dynamics. In groups, approval-seeking turns into performing. Laughing when you don't find it funny. Agreeing when you don't align. Staying quiet when you should speak. You trade authenticity for acceptance. And the price is identity erosion. You begin to forget what you actually think, what you actually want, who you actually are. That's not connection. That's self-abandonment. Strong people don't chase belonging. They bring alignment. They don't ask, "Do you like me?" They ask, "Am I being honest with myself?" That's own power. Here's a practical rule you need to adopt. If you wouldn't ask someone to make your decisions, don't ask them to validate them. Say it again internally. If they don't run your life, they don't get to approve it. You don't need their permission. This chapter is about removing one habit, emotionally checking in before you trust yourself. Instead of asking, "Is this okay?" Ask, "Is this aligned?" Instead of asking, "What do they think?" Ask, "What do I know?" That shift is uncomfortable at first, because approval-seeking has been your safety net. But safety nets also limit movement. When you remove the net, you learn balance. You learn strength. You learn authority. That's discipline. Let's be clear. Some people will resist this version of you. They will call you distant, cold, different. What they really mean is, "You stopped regulating your emotions for me." That's not your problem. You have a choice. You can remain emotionally available to everyone, or you can become internally stable. Stability beats likability every time. This chapter is not telling you to isolate. It's telling you to stop outsourcing your worth. Because the moment you stop seeking validation, something powerful happens. Your energy returns. Your mind quiets. Your presence deepens. You stop reacting. You start choosing. That's the foundation of inner authority. And now you're ready for the next layer. Because once you stop seeking approval, you'll notice another behavior beneath it. The habit of over-explaining. The reflex to justify. The fear of being questioned. You've seen the cost. You've chosen ownership over rent. Now it's time to confront the behavior that exposes insecurity instantly. You reclaimed your power. Now let's sharpen it. Chapter 3: Weak people over-explain, strong people decide. Over-explaining is fear dressed up as politeness. It looks harmless. It sounds reasonable. But underneath it is hesitation, self-doubt, and the need to be accepted. Strong people see it immediately. Weak people live inside it. Here is the line you must burn into your mind. Confidence moves without commentary. That's the key. When you are confident, you decide, and the decision stands. When you are unsure, you talk. You justify. You explain. You have a choice. You can move with clarity, or you can narrate your fear. Most people believe over-explaining makes them look considerate. In reality, it makes them look unsure. And uncertainty invites pressure. Let's break this down in real life. In meetings, weak people speak first to defend themselves. They add context nobody asked for. They preempt criticism that hasn't even appeared. "I just want to explain why I thought this might work. And of course I could be wrong." But that sentence already lost. Strong people don't do that. They say, "This is the recommendation. This is the decision. This is the next step." Then they stop. And notice what happens. The room adjusts. Questions become respectful. Resistance decreases. Because certainty sets the frame. You don't need their permission. In arguments, over-explaining becomes emotional leakage. You repeat yourself. You raise your voice. You try to be understood at any cost. But the more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. Why? Because arguments are not won by volume. They are won by control. Strong people don't chase agreement in conflict. They state their boundary once. They restate it if necessary. Then they disengage. Weak people explain until they're exhausted. That's the pattern. You have a choice. You can drain yourself trying to convince, or you can conserve energy by deciding. Let's talk about personal boundaries. This is where over-explaining destroys respect the fastest. I can't do that because I've been really busy lately and I have a lot going on and I hope you understand. No, stop. That sentence tells the other person your boundary is flexible. It tells them to push, and they will. Strong boundaries are short. I'm not available. That doesn't work for me. I won't be doing that. That's it. No backstory. No apology. No defense. You have a choice. You can protect your time, or you can donate it to people who don't respect it. Confidence moves without commentary. Say it again. Over-explaining is not kindness. It's fear of backlash, fear of being disliked, fear of confrontation, fear of standing alone. But here's the discipline you must learn. Standing alone briefly is better than bending forever. That's the key. Strong people understand something critical. You don't need to win every interaction. You need to remain aligned. Alignment builds authority. Agreement does not. Here's why over-explaining fails psychologically. It shifts the focus from your decision to their reaction. You stop leading. You start reacting. And the moment you react, you lose control of the frame. Strong people hold the frame. They decide the pace. They decide the terms. Not through aggression, through certainty. Again, it's not about dominance. It's about discipline. It's not about force. It's about clarity. Let's get practical. From this point on, adopt the rule of one sentence. State your decision in one sentence. If clarification is requested, give one more sentence. Then stop. No emotional padding. No justification. You will feel uncomfortable. That's normal. Your nervous system is addicted to explaining. It believes explanation equals safety. But safety built on approval is fragile. You have a choice. You can feel uncomfortable now, or powerless later. Strong people choose discomfort early. Weak people choose comfort and pay later. Notice this as well. The people who accuse you of being cold when you stop explaining are the same people who benefited from your over-explaining. They lost access. They lost leverage. That's not cruelty. That's consequence. You don't need their permission. Here's another shift you must internalize. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. Say it again internally. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions. Over-explaining is emotional caretaking. It says, let me soften this so you don't feel discomfort. But discomfort is part of growth, yours and theirs. Strong people allow discomfort. They don't rush to erase it. That's why they're respected. Let's look at leaders again. A leader who over-explains looks unsure. A leader who decides creates momentum. People don't follow explanations. They follow direction. That's the key. This chapter is about replacing one habit with another. Replace explaining with deciding. Replace justifying with standing. Replace reacting with holding. Every time you choose brevity, you reinforce authority. Every time you resist the urge to explain, you strengthen self-trust. You have a choice, and that choice appears dozens of times a day. Small moments, emails, texts, conversations. Choose discipline in the small moments, and authority grows quietly. This is not about becoming silent all the time. It's about speaking with intention. When you speak less, your words carry weight. When you explain less, your presence deepens. Confidence moves without commentary. That sentence is not motivational. It's operational. Use it. And once you stop over-explaining, something else becomes possible. Silence. Not awkward silence. Controlled silence. Silence that forces others to reveal themselves. Silence that holds power. You've stopped seeking validation. You've stopped explaining. Now you're ready to learn how silence itself becomes dominance. You made the decision. Now let's master what comes after it. Chapter 4. Silence is not passive. It is dominant. Most people misunderstand silence. They think silence means weakness. They think it means avoidance. They think it means submission. They're wrong. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is one of the strongest positions you can take. Here is the truth you must internalize. Silence removes leverage from emotional manipulators. That's the key. Manipulation feeds on reaction, on words, on explanations, on emotional leakage. When you go silent, there is nothing to grab onto. You have a choice. You can fill the space with words, or you can let the other person face themselves. Most people talk because silence makes them uncomfortable. Not because silence is wrong, but because silence exposes. Silence exposes insecurity. Silence exposes neediness. Silence exposes intent. That's why emotionally manipulative people hate it. In conflict, silence is not surrender. It is control. Let's break this down. When someone challenges you emotionally, they are usually looking for one thing: a reaction, anger, defensiveness, explanation, justification. Any reaction gives them leverage, because now they can steer the interaction. They can provoke. They can escalate. Silence shuts that down instantly. When you don't respond, the emotional pressure stays with them. They feel it. They sit in it. They reveal themselves through it. That's dominance. You have a choice. You can relieve their discomfort with words, or you can let them carry it. Strong people let others carry their own emotions. Weak people rush to fix them. That's the difference. Let's talk about arguments. In arguments, most people overtalk because they want resolution. But resolution doesn't come from more words. It comes from clarity. If you've already stated your position and the other person keeps pushing, silence is not avoidance. It's enforcement. You are saying, without words, this discussion is over. And discussions that are truly over don't require explanation. Silence removes leverage from emotional manipulators. Say it again internally. Think about how many arguments in your life escalated because you kept talking, kept explaining, kept defending. Every sentence added fuel. Strong people know when to stop. They say what needs to be said once. Then they stop. The silence that follows is not empty. It's full of authority. You have a choice. You can keep trying to be understood, or you can stand in your position. Standing requires silence. Now let's look at another situation. Being provoked. Provocation is a test. It's designed to see if you can be pulled out of yourself. Insults, passive-aggressive comments, sarcasm, pressure, all designed to make you react. Silence breaks the test. When you don't react, the provocation fails. And the person trying to provoke you loses power. They wanted to control your state. They failed. That's dominance. Here's what most people don't realize. Silence creates asymmetry. When one person is emotional and the other is calm and silent, the calm one holds power. Not because they're louder, because they're unmoved. And unmoved people are dangerous, not physically but psychologically. You cannot manipulate someone who doesn't react. That's the key. Let's talk about emotional manipulators directly. They use guilt. They use urgency. They use confusion. They use repetition. Their goal is to get you talking until you give in. Silence removes their tools. No words to twist. No explanations to exploit. No emotions to mirror. Just stillness. And stillness forces them to escalate or retreat. Either way, the truth comes out. You have a choice. You can expose manipulation, or you can feed it. Silence exposes it. Now let's be clear. Silence is not avoidance when you've already spoken. Silence is avoidance only when you're afraid to speak at all. There's a difference. Strong silence comes after clarity. Weak silence comes from fear. This chapter is about strong silence. You speak once, clearly, calmly, then you stop. That's discipline. It's not about ignoring. It's about containment. Containment of emotion. Containment of energy. Containment of power. Most people leak energy through words. Strong people conserve it through silence. That's why they last longer. That's why they command respect without demanding it. Here's a practical rule you must adopt. If repeating yourself won't change the outcome, stop talking. Say it again. If repeating yourself won't change the outcome, stop talking. Silence is the signal that the line has been drawn. Now let's look at social situations. In groups, silence is often misinterpreted as awkwardness. But strong silence isn't awkward. It's grounded. People who are comfortable with silence don't chase attention. They don't fill gaps. They don't perform. And that makes them noticeable. Silence draws attention because it's rare. Most people are afraid of it. You have a choice. You can be noisy and forgettable, or quiet and grounded. Grounded people don't rush. They don't interrupt. They don't overshare. They observe. They choose when to speak. And when they do, people listen. That's the key. Silence also protects you. Protects your intentions, your plans, your next move. Not everything needs to be announced. Not everything needs to be explained. Strong people move quietly. They let results speak. You don't need their permission. Say it again. Silence is not passive. It is active restraint. It is choosing not to react, not to explain, not to defend. And restraint is strength. You've learned to stop seeking validation. You've learned to stop over-explaining. Now you're learning to hold silence. These are not separate skills. They are layers of the same discipline, the discipline of emotional control. When you master silence, you gain something rare: presence. Presence that doesn't chase, doesn't flinch, doesn't react. And that presence changes how people treat you, because people respect what they can't control. Silence removes leverage from emotional manipulators. Say it one last time. You have a choice. You can speak to be liked, or stay silent to remain powerful. You've learned how to stand. You've learned how to decide. You've learned how to hold silence. Now it's time to confront the next instinct that weakens authority. The need to defend your decisions. Because the moment you start defending, you reopen the door you just closed. You are stronger now, calmer, more contained. Let's protect that strength. Chapter 5. Stop defending your decisions. The moment you defend a decision, you reopen it. You turn something finished into something negotiable. You invite opinions where none were required. Understand this clearly. A decision explained is a decision weakened. That's the key. Defending does not protect your choice. It exposes doubt around it. And doubt is an invitation. You have a choice. You can stand by what you chose, or you can argue for it until it collapses. Most people defend their decisions because they want peace. They want others to accept it. They want approval disguised as understanding. But defending never creates peace. Creates discussion. And discussion creates pressure. Strong people understand this early. Standing ends discussion. Defending extends it. Let's talk about career decisions. You quit a job. You change direction. You say no to an opportunity. And immediately people ask, why? Are you sure? Don't you think you're being risky? Weak response sounds like this. Well, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and there were a lot of reasons, and I just felt like, stop. That explanation invites critique. Now they can poke holes. Now they can project fear onto you. Strong response sounds like this. This is the right move for me. Then silence. No debate. No defense. You don't need their permission. Career authority doesn't come from convincing others. It comes from committing to yourself. That's discipline. Let's talk about personal boundaries. This is where defending destroys respect the fastest. I can't come because I've been really busy and I've had a lot going on and I just need some time. That's a defense. And defenses get challenged. Strong boundaries don't explain. They state, I'm not available. I won't be doing that. That doesn't work for me. Then stop. You have a choice. You can protect your boundary, or you can explain it until it disappears. People don't respect boundaries they can negotiate. They respect boundaries that stand. That's the key. Now let's talk about lifestyle choices. How you eat, how you train, how you rest, how you live. The moment you change, people question. You don't drink anymore? You're too serious. Why are you so strict? If you defend, you invite mockery. If you stand, you invite distance or respect. And distance is often necessary. Strong people don't explain their discipline to undisciplined minds. Read that again. A decision explained is a decision weakened. Why does defending feel so natural? Because defending is emotional. It's reactive. It's driven by the need to be understood. Standing is rational. It's grounded. It's driven by self-trust. And self-trust doesn't speak loudly. You have a choice. You can react emotionally or respond with certainty. Certainty needs no defense. Here's a psychological truth most people miss. The more you defend a decision, the more people assume it's unstable. They think, if it were solid, why explain so much? That's not fair, but it's real. Strong people design their behavior around reality, not fairness. They understand how power works. Power respects finality. Defending removes finality. Let's make this practical. From now on, adopt this rule. If the decision has already been made, it does not need defending. Say it again internally. If it's done, it's done. Questions don't require explanations. They require consistency. If someone challenges your decision tomorrow, and you give the same calm response you gave today, the challenge dies. If you change your tone, add emotion, add justification, the challenge grows. That's the pattern. You have a choice. You can teach people that your decisions are stable, or that they're open for negotiation. This chapter is not about becoming rigid. It's about becoming rooted. Rooted people don't sway with opinions. They don't bend under pressure. They adjust only when they decide to adjust. And when they do adjust, they don't defend that either. They move. Here's another truth you need to accept. Not everyone deserves access to your reasoning. Reasoning is private. Decisions are public. Strong people separate the two. They think deeply, then they act simply. Weak people act emotionally, then explain endlessly. That's the difference. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need their permission to change. You don't need their permission to say no. You don't need their permission to live differently. Defending your decisions gives people authority they never earned. Standing by your decisions removes that authority. That's the key. Now let's address the fear underneath defending. The fear is this: if I don't explain, they'll judge me. They will judge you anyway. Strong people understand this early, so they stop trying to control judgment. They focus on alignment. Alignment with values. Alignment with direction. Alignment with self-respect. That alignment is felt. And felt alignment creates authority. This chapter asks you to remove one habit. Explaining after deciding. Make your decision. Communicate it clearly. Then stop talking. Let the discomfort sit. That discomfort is the cost of self-respect. And it's cheaper than the cost of self-betrayal. You have a choice. You can pay now or pay later. Strong people pay early. Every time you resist defending, your inner authority grows. Every time you stand calmly, your presence strengthens. You become predictable in the best way. People learn. Pushing doesn't work. And when pushing stops, peace begins. You've learned how to stand. You've learned how to decide. You've learned how to remain silent. You've learned how to stop defending. Now comes the next level. Because once you stop defending, you'll notice something powerful emerging. Control over your emotional state. Not loud control, quiet control. And quiet control is real control. You've closed the door to debate. Now let's lock in mastery. Chapter 6, Emotional Control is Quiet Control. Most people believe control looks loud. They think control is dominance, intensity, force. They're wrong. Real control is quiet. Here is the truth you must understand deeply. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. That's the key. Not dangerous in a reckless way. Dangerous in a psychological way. Because calm people cannot be rushed, cannot be baited, cannot be controlled. Explaining yourself emotionally is not strength. It is reaction. And reaction is always weaker than response. You have a choice. You can react emotionally, or you can respond deliberately. Most people never learn the difference. A reaction is automatic, comes from impulse, comes from fear, ego, or the need to be understood. A response is chosen, comes from discipline, comes from control. Strong people respond. Weak people react. That's the dividing line. Let's look at emotionally charged situations. because this is where authority is truly tested. Someone criticizes you unfairly. Someone questions your motives. Someone disrespects a boundary you've already stated. Your body reacts instantly. Heart rate up, thoughts racing, words lining up, ready to fire. This is the moment where most people lose power. They explain emotionally. They defend emotionally. They speak emotionally. And once emotion takes the wheel, control is gone. You have a choice. You can let emotion drive, or you can let discipline take over. Here's the shift you must make. Emotion is information, not instruction. Say it again. Emotion tells you something is happening. It does not tell you what to do. Strong people feel emotion fully, but they don't obey it. That's emotional control. And emotional control is quiet control. Let's talk about restraint. Restraint is not suppression. It's containment. Suppression ignores emotion. Containment holds it without leaking it. When you restrain yourself, you don't deny what you feel. You delay expression until it serves you. That delay is power. Most people express immediately. Strong people choose timing. That's the key. Look at people who command respect in tense situations. They don't rush to speak. They don't rush to correct. They don't rush to defend. They pause. That pause is not empty. It's loaded. It signals confidence. It signals certainty. It signals that nothing just shook them. And people respond to that instinctively. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Why? Because emotional people reveal their position. Calm people conceal theirs. Emotional people give away leverage through tone, volume, urgency. Calm people give away nothing. You cannot manipulate someone who doesn't react. That's the real power. Let's talk about arguments again, but from a different angle. In heated arguments, the person who loses emotional control loses authority. Always. It doesn't matter who's right. It matters who remains composed. The calm person sets the pace. The emotional person chases it. Strong people don't try to win arguments. They aim to remain unmoved, because being unmoved forces the other person to escalate or stop. Either way, control shifts. You have a choice. You can match intensity, or you can outlast it. Outlasting always wins. Now let's talk about respect. Real respect, not surface-level politeness. Respect is given to those who regulate themselves. People trust calm people. They follow calm people. They hesitate to challenge calm people. Why? Because calm signals certainty. If someone can remain composed under pressure, others assume they know something. They assume strength. They assume authority. Even if nothing is said. That's quiet control. Here's a truth most people miss. The loudest person in the room is usually the least powerful. Power doesn't announce itself. It stabilizes. And stabilization happens through emotional control. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need to prove how you feel. You don't need to display intensity to be taken seriously. You don't need to explain your emotions for them to be valid. Strong people feel deeply but show selectively. That selectivity is discipline. Let's make this practical. From now on, when emotion rises, do this. Pause. Breathe once. Say nothing. That pause breaks the reaction loop. Then ask yourself one question. Will speaking now increase or decrease my control? If it decreases control, don't speak. Silence is a response. Say it again. Silence is a response. Most people think silence means losing. In reality, silence often means you've already won. Because the calm person forces the emotional person to carry the weight of the moment alone. That's uncomfortable. And discomfort reveals behavior. You have a choice. You can regulate the room, or be regulated by it. Strong people regulate. Now let's look at long-term respect. People don't remember what you said in emotional moments. They remember how you handled yourself. They remember that you didn't snap, didn't crumble, didn't overreact. That memory builds a reputation for steadiness, for reliability, for authority. That reputation opens doors without words. The calmer you are, the more dangerous you become. Dangerous because you're predictable in one way only, you don't react. That makes people cautious around you, respectful, measured. This is not about intimidation. It's about presence. Presence that doesn't leak emotion. A presence that doesn't seek validation. A presence that doesn't explain itself. You've built this step by step. You stopped seeking approval. You stopped over-explaining. You learned to hold silence. You stopped defending decisions. Now emotional control locks it all together. Without emotional control, all other discipline collapses under pressure. That's why this chapter matters. Here's the final shift you must internalize. Calm is not weakness. Calm is containment of force, like a blade in a sheath. And used but ready. You don't show it. You don't wave it around. You don't threaten with it. You just carry it. And people feel that. You have a choice. You can be emotionally expressive and easily read, or emotionally controlled and hard to move. Strong people choose the second, not because they're cold, but because they're disciplined. This chapter is not asking you to feel less. It's asking you to leak less. And when you leak less, you control more. Quietly, you've learned how to control emotion. Now there's one more layer of strength to develop. Because emotional control creates something else. The ability to be misunderstood without collapsing. To stand firm even when others don't get you. That's the next test. You are calm now. Contained. Unmoved. Now let's talk about what happens when people don't understand you, and why that makes you stronger. Chapter 7, Why Being Misunderstood Makes You Stronger. Being misunderstood hurts. That's the truth. Creates tension in your chest. It triggers the urge to explain. Pulls you toward justification. But here is the discipline most people never develop. Being misunderstood is not a flaw. It is a filter. And this sentence must become non-negotiable in your mind. Clarity is not owed to everyone. That's the key. You have a choice. You can exhaust yourself trying to be understood, or you can grow stronger by standing firm without explanation. Most people fear being misunderstood because they confuse misunderstanding with rejection. They think, if they don't get me, I'll lose connection. What they don't realize is this. Not everyone is meant to understand you. And trying to make everyone understand you will dilute you. Strong people accept misunderstanding early. Weak people fight it forever. Let's be precise. Being misunderstood feels uncomfortable because it removes control. You can't manage how others perceive you. You can't correct every assumption. You can't control every narrative. And that loss of control scares people. But here's the truth. The need to be understood is the need to be safe. And safety built on perception is fragile. You have a choice. You can be safe in others' opinions, or grounded in your own alignment. Alignment wins. Look at creators who changed direction. They were called confused, sellouts, delusional. If they stopped to explain every move, they would have stalled. Instead, they moved forward quietly. Results eventually spoke. Leaders experience this constantly. Decisions are misunderstood. Intentions are questioned. Motives are assumed. Strong leaders don't rush to clarify themselves to everyone. They clarify direction and let time do the rest. That's discipline. Here's a hard truth you must accept. Some people misunderstand you on purpose. Because misunderstanding gives them comfort. It justifies their resistance. Protects their identity. You cannot fix that. And you shouldn't try. Clarity is not owed to everyone. Say it again. Clarity is not owed to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Now let's talk about why misunderstanding actually makes you stronger. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop performing. When you stop performing, you stop shaping yourself around others' expectations. That's when identity solidifies. Weak people shape themselves to be understood. Strong people shape themselves to be aligned. Alignment produces consistency. Consistency produces authority. Authority does not need explanation. You have a choice. You can chase agreement, or you can build coherence. Coherence lasts. Let's talk about personal relationships. When you change, people from your past may say, "You've changed. You're distant. You're not the same anymore." They are right. And that's not an accusation. That's evidence. Strong people don't explain growth to people committed to the old version of them. They move forward. If you try to make everyone comfortable with your evolution, you will stop evolving. That's the trap. Being misunderstood forces you to rely on yourself. It strengthens self-trust. It builds internal validation. Because when no one claps, no one agrees, and no one confirms, you either collapse or you stabilize. Strong people stabilize. That's the key. Here's another truth. Being misunderstood removes weak opinions from your life. People who require constant explanation drain energy. People who respect direction conserve it. When you stop explaining, some people leave. That's not loss. That's filtration. You have a choice. You can keep everyone close, or keep yourself intact. Integrity beats popularity every time. Let's address the urge to clarify. That urge is emotional. It comes from discomfort, from anxiety, from the fear of being judged incorrectly. But incorrect judgment does not damage aligned people. Only self-betrayal does. Say it again internally. Other people misunderstanding me does not harm me. Abandoning myself does. Strong people live by this principle quietly. They let others talk. They let assumptions form. They let time correct what words never could. Because time favors consistency. Now let's talk about social perception. People will project onto you regardless. Your silence will be interpreted. Your calm will be misread. Your boundaries will be labeled. You cannot control this. But you can control one thing. Your reaction. You have a choice. You can rush to fix perceptions, or you can let reality speak later. Strong people choose later. Here's why. Words are temporary. Behavior compounds. You don't need to clarify who you are today. You need to live it long enough for it to become obvious. That's discipline. Clarity is not owed to everyone. That phrase is not an excuse to be careless. It's permission to be selective. Selective with explanations. Selective with access. Selective with emotional labor. Strong people explain to those who are aligned. They stay silent with those who are not. That's efficiency. Let's talk about internal strength. When you accept being misunderstood, something shifts. You stop scanning reactions. You stop correcting narratives. You stop performing identity. Your energy returns. That energy fuels focus. Focus fuels progress. Progress silences noise. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need permission to be misunderstood while you build something real. Here's the final truth of this chapter. If everyone understands you, you are probably not growing fast enough. Growth creates distance. Distance creates misunderstanding. Misunderstanding creates strength. If you don't collapse under it, you have a choice. You can shrink to be understood, or expand and be misunderstood for a while. Strong people choose expansion. They accept loneliness over dilution. They accept silence over performance. They accept misunderstanding over self-betrayal. That's inner authority. You've learned to stand, to decide, to stay silent, to stop defending, to control emotion. Now you've learned to tolerate misunderstanding. And that tolerance unlocks the next discipline. Because once you stop needing to be understood, you are finally free from something even more powerful. Other people's opinions. You're stronger now, more stable, less reactive. Now it's time to detach completely. Chapter 8. Detach from other people's opinions. Other people's opinions feel powerful only when you believe they belong to you. They don't. They belong to them. Here is the truth that changes everything when you finally accept it. Other people's reactions are reflections of their inner world, not your responsibility. That's the key. And this sentence must be drilled into you until it becomes instinct. Your peace increases as your explanations decrease. You have a choice. You can carry other people's emotions, or you can carry your own direction. Most people confuse awareness with responsibility. They notice reactions and immediately feel obligated to respond, clarify, soften, or defend. That obligation is self-imposed, and it's draining you. Let's be very clear. You are not required to manage how other people feel about your choices. Not their disappointment, not their confusion, not their discomfort. You don't need their permission. Criticism is where this lesson becomes unavoidable. When someone criticizes you, there are only two possibilities. Either the criticism is useful or it's noise. If it's useful, you adjust quietly. If it's noise, you ignore it completely. What weak people do is a third option. They argue with noise. They explain. They defend. They react. And in doing so, they give noise power. Strong people don't do that. Strong people ask one question and one question only. Does this move me forward? If the answer is no, they disengage. That's discipline. Criticism often isn't about you at all. It's about insecurity, envy, fear, projection. When someone reacts strongly to your boundaries, your growth, or your calm, they're revealing something unresolved inside themselves. That is not your burden to carry. Say it again internally. Other people's reactions are reflections of their inner world, not my responsibility. Now let's talk about gossip. Gossip exists for one reason: to bond weak people through shared judgment. When you detach from opinions, gossip loses all power over you. Because gossip feeds on reaction, on defensiveness, on embarrassment. When you don't react, gossip dies quickly. Strong people don't chase rumors. They don't correct every lie. They don't explain their side to everyone. They let time and consistency do the work. That's the key. Here's something uncomfortable but true. People who gossip about you are doing you a favor. They reveal who cannot be trusted. They reveal who lives in reaction. They reveal who should not have access to you. Detachment sharpens discernment. You have a choice. You can try to be liked by everyone, or respected by the right few. Respect comes from stability, not explanation. Now let's talk about emotional bait. This is where most people fail. Emotional bait is designed to provoke. Comment, a look, a message, a tone. Its only purpose is to pull you out of yourself. When you react, the bait works. When you explain, it works even better. Because now the other person controls the pace and direction of the interaction. Strong people don't bite. They recognize bait immediately and do nothing. No reply, no clarification, no emotional shift. That restraint frustrates manipulators, and frustration reveals intent. Silence removes leverage from emotional manipulators. You've learned that already. Detachment locks it in. You have a choice. You can feed drama or starve it. Starving drama feels uncomfortable at first, because your ego wants resolution. Your emotions want release. But discipline wants peace. And peace is worth the discomfort. Your peace increases as your explanations decrease. Say it again. Now let's talk about opinions from people close to you. This is harder. Family, friends, colleagues. Their opinions feel heavier because you value connection. But here's the truth. Proximity does not equal authority. Just because someone is close to you does not mean they get to direct your life. Strong people listen, but they don't absorb. They hear opinions without letting them shape identity. They filter feedback through alignment, not emotion. That's maturity. You don't need to convince people you love. You need to live consistently enough that arguments become irrelevant. Consistency is louder than defense. You have a choice. You can argue for your life choices, or let results speak later. Strong people choose later. Detachment is not indifference. It's clarity. It's knowing where you end and others begin. When you detach from opinions, something important happens internally. Your mind quiets. Your focus sharpens. Your energy returns. Because you're no longer scanning for approval or threat. You're centered. That centered state is rare. And rare states command respect without effort. Here's a practical discipline you must adopt. When someone reacts emotionally to your choices, do not rush to respond. Pause. Observe. Decide if a response is necessary. Most of the time, it's not. Silence is not weakness here. Silence is selection. You're selecting peace. You have a choice. You can live reactively or deliberately. Deliberate people don't explain themselves to noise. They move forward quietly. This chapter is about removing one illusion. The illusion that opinions shape reality. They don't. Action shapes reality. Consistency shapes reality. Time shapes reality. Opinions fade. Strong people build while others talk. That's why detachment is essential to inner authority. Without detachment, every comment pulls you off course. With detachment, nothing does. You become steady. And steady people are hard to influence, hard to manipulate, hard to derail. That's real power. Your peace increases as your explanations decrease. This is not a suggestion. It's a law. The less you explain, the less you react. The less you react, the more control you gain. The more control you gain, the calmer you become. And calm people move differently. You've now removed the influence of approval, the need to explain, the fear of misunderstanding, the weight of opinions. What remains is something rare. Focus. Pure, undistracted focus on your own path. And focus is the final discipline. Because once you detach from opinions, the only thing left to master is consistency. Doing the work quietly, repeatedly, without announcement. You're almost there. You're stable now. Detached. Calm. Now it's time to turn inward completely. Chapter 9. Build authority through consistent action. Authority is not something you announce. It is not something you demand. It is not something you explain. Authority is built the same way strength is built. Through repetition. Here is the truth that removes confusion once and for all. Results silence questions faster than words ever could. That's the key. You have a choice. You can talk about who you are, or you can show it so often that talking becomes unnecessary. Most people try to sound authoritative. Strong people become authoritative. And the difference is consistency. Anyone can be confident once. Anyone can set a boundary once. Anyone can stay calm once. But authority is earned when you do it again, and again, and again, without explanation. That repetition teaches people how to treat you. Let's be clear about something uncomfortable. If people keep questioning you, it's not always because they're disrespectful. Sometimes it's because your behavior has been inconsistent. Inconsistency invites testing. Consistency ends it. That's discipline. Look at real-world authority. The coworker who always delivers on time doesn't need to justify deadlines. The leader who stays calm under pressure doesn't need to raise their voice. The person who enforces boundaries consistently doesn't need to restate them. Their behavior speaks before they do. That's the power of consistency. Results silence questions faster than words ever could. Say it again. Most people try to explain their way into respect. But respect doesn't come from explanation. It comes from reliability. If you say no today but yes tomorrow under pressure, your no means nothing. If you stay calm sometimes but explode when pushed, your calm means nothing. If you set boundaries but abandon them for comfort, your boundaries mean nothing. Strong people understand this early. They don't rely on mood. They rely on discipline. You have a choice. You can let circumstances shape your behavior, or you can let principles shape it. Principles compound. Let's talk about how this plays out in everyday life. In work environments, authority grows when your actions match your words every time. You don't need to remind people of your role if your behavior reinforces it. You don't need to explain expectations if you enforce standards consistently. People stop questioning what they can predict. That's human nature. In personal life, the same rule applies. If you consistently protect your time, people stop asking for exceptions. If you consistently disengage from drama, people stop pulling you into it. If you consistently move forward without explaining, people stop demanding explanations. Consistency trains others. That's the key. Now here's where most people fail. They want immediate authority without long-term discipline. They want respect now, but they bend tomorrow. They want peace now, but they explain under pressure. They want control now, but they react emotionally when tested. Authority doesn't work like that. Authority is slow, quiet, accumulative, and that's why weak people abandon it early. Strong people stay. You have a choice. You can choose short-term comfort or long-term authority. Long-term authority always wins. Let's talk about results. Results don't mean dramatic success. They mean visible consistency. Showing up, following through, Holding the line. Results can be internal too. Calm under pressure. Silence instead of reaction. Action instead of explanation. Those results are felt even when they aren't seen. People sense stability, and stability creates gravity. That's why people defer to calm, consistent individuals without knowing why. They feel anchored. Here's another truth you must accept. You cannot rush authority. You can only reinforce it. Every time you act in alignment, you add weight. Every time you compromise alignment, you remove it. That's why discipline matters more than intensity. Intensity fades. Discipline remains. It's not about motivation. It's about repetition. Say it again. Most people wait to feel ready before acting. Strong people act because it's who they are. They don't announce changes. They embody them. And embodiment ends conversation. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need permission to be consistent. You don't need permission to live disciplined. You don't need permission to let results speak. Now let's talk about silence again, but in a different way. When your actions are consistent, silence becomes natural. You don't need to explain because there's nothing to explain. Your behavior has already answered the question. That's the highest form of communication. Behavior that needs no commentary. That's authority. Here's a practical discipline you must adopt. Stop correcting people with words. Correct them with consistency. If someone doubts you, don't argue. Show up again. Do the work again. Hold the boundary again. Eventually, doubt dissolves. Not because you convinced them, but because reality did. That's the key. This chapter is about patience. The patience to let results accumulate. The patience to let behavior replace explanation. The patience to remain consistent when no one is watching. That patience separates strong people from performers. Performers need applause. Strong people need alignment. Alignment compounds into authority. Now here's the final truth of this chapter. When you become consistent, you become predictable. And predictability when aligned is power. People trust what they can predict. They respect what doesn't waver. They stop testing what doesn't bend. That's when life becomes quieter. Less resistance. Less questioning. Less noise. Not because you demanded silence, but because your actions earned it. You have built something now. You've removed the need for approval. You've stopped explaining. You've learned silence. You've controlled emotion. You've detached from opinions. You've become consistent. And consistency has given you authority. But there is one final layer. Because true authority is not just external. It's internal. It's how you relate to yourself when no one is watching. When no one is questioning. When no one is reacting. That final layer is ownership. Full ownership of who you are without negotiation. You've built the foundation. Now it's time to seal it. Chapter 10. Become untouchable by owning yourself fully. There is a moment when everything clicks. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Quietly. That moment is this. When you stop explaining, you stop negotiating your identity. And this sentence must become final inside you. You are not here to be agreed with, you are here to be aligned with yourself. That's the key. Alignment is the end of seeking, the end of proving, the end of defending. When you own yourself fully, nothing outside you has leverage anymore. You have a choice. You can keep adjusting who you are to fit the room, or you can become solid enough that the room adjusts to you. Most people never reach this point. They live in constant negotiation, negotiating their tone, negotiating their boundaries, negotiating their values, negotiating their identity. They call it being flexible. But it's not flexibility. It's fragmentation. Owning yourself fully means you stop fragmenting. You become one thing everywhere. That's quiet discipline. Let's be very clear. Owning yourself does not mean announcing who you are. It does not mean demanding respect. It does not mean pushing your identity onto others. It means you no longer move based on reaction. You move based on alignment. And alignment doesn't ask questions. You have a choice. You can live as a version of yourself that changes depending on who's watching, or as a version that stays the same whether anyone is watching or not. Strong people choose the second. That choice is what makes them untouchable. When you own yourself fully, criticism loses power. Misunderstanding loses urgency. Opinions lose weight. Because none of those things define you anymore. They observe you. They react to you. But they do not shape you. That's ownership. You are not here to be agreed with. You are here to be aligned with yourself. Say it again. This chapter is about permanence. Not motivation. Not inspiration. Permanence. Quiet discipline is not something you turn on when life is easy. It's who you are when life applies pressure. Pressure reveals ownership. If you still explain under pressure, ownership is incomplete. If you still defend under pressure, ownership is incomplete. If you still react emotionally under pressure, ownership is incomplete. This is not judgment. It's diagnosis. And diagnosis leads to mastery. Owning yourself fully means accepting the cost. Because there is a cost. You will disappoint people. You will confuse people. You will lose access to some relationships. That's not failure. That's filtration. Weak people fear this cost. Strong people pay it willingly. Because the alternative cost is worse. The cost of self-betrayal. The cost of living as a diluted version of yourself. The cost of constant internal conflict. You have a choice. You can pay externally or internally. Strong people pay externally and live in peace internally. That's the trade. Let's talk about lifestyle now. Quiet discipline is not something you perform once. It's something you embody daily. It shows up in how you speak, how you decide, how you move, how you stop. You don't rush. You don't overcommit. You don't over-explain. You don't chase resolution. You live deliberately, and deliberate living feels slow at first, because chaos is loud. Discipline is quiet. But over time, discipline creates momentum, and momentum creates freedom. That's the path. Owning yourself fully also means this. You stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. You don't wait to be confident. You don't wait to be calm. You don't wait to be disciplined. You act from identity, not toward it. That's the shift. Most people say, once I feel ready, I'll act. Strong people act because that's who they are now. Identity drives behavior, not the other way around. You don't need their permission. Say it again. You don't need permission to live quietly. You don't need permission to be disciplined. You don't need permission to stop explaining yourself. Here's the final integration of everything you've learned. When you stop seeking validation, you reclaim power. When you stop explaining, you hold authority. When you embrace silence, you remove leverage. When you stop defending, you end debate. When you control emotion, you control yourself. When you accept misunderstanding, you grow stronger. When you detach from opinions, you gain peace. When you act consistently, you earn respect. And when you own yourself fully, you become untouchable. Not arrogant, not cold, untouchable. Because nothing external can move you without your consent. That's real strength. This chapter is not asking you to change who you are. It's asking you to stop negotiating it. Stop editing yourself for comfort. Stop explaining yourself for acceptance. Stop reacting for approval. Stand. Decide. Move. Quietly. You are not here to be agreed with, you are here to be aligned with yourself. That alignment is your anchor. When life gets noisy, return to it. When pressure rises, return to it. When doubt creeps in, return to it. Alignment never lies. Here's your final discipline. From this moment on, let your default state be calm. Let your default response be silence. Let your default position be self-trust. Speak when necessary. Act consistently. Explain rarely. Live as if nothing needs defending. Because nothing does. You are not performing anymore. You are embodying. And embodiment changes everything. People will feel it. They may not name it. They may not understand it. But they will respect it. Because self-owned people move differently. They don't rush. They don't flinch. They don't fold. They don't need to win arguments. They don't need to correct perceptions. They don't need to announce growth. They grow quietly, and quiet growth is unstoppable. This is not a phase. This is not a tactic. This is a way of being. Quiet discipline. Emotional control. Inner authority. You've learned the principles. Now live them. No announcement. No explanation. No negotiation. Just alignment. And that alignment will carry you further than words ever could. Stop explaining yourself. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. Every time you resist the urge to justify, you reclaim your power. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you strengthen your inner authority. Every time you stand firm without explanation, you teach the world how to treat you. You do not need to convince. You do not need approval. You do not need to be understood. Your challenge is simple. For the next 7 days, say less. Defend nothing. Explain nothing. Let your actions speak. And watch how quickly your presence becomes heavier, calmer, and impossible to ignore. This is quiet discipline. This is emotional control. This is unbreakable inner authority.